The classroom floated in the middle of space, surrounded by stars. Station 9 was the biggest military academy in the Galactic Coalition, and today, Classroom 7B was full of young cadets from different worlds. They sat at curved desks that adjusted to each species' body shape. Some had scales, some had tentacles, and some looked like floating clouds of gas. Ho sat in the back row, trying to look smaller than he was. This was hard because humans were taller than most species in the Coalition. He watched Instructor pace at the front of the room. The instructor had dark green scales and yellow eyes that never blinked. His tail swept back and forth as he moved, a sign he was excited about today's lesson. Military History 301, announced, his voice echoing through the translation devices everyone wore. Today we study primitive warfare, the kind that existed before civilized species joined our coalition. Ho felt his stomach tighten. He knew what was coming. There were only 3 humans in the entire academy, and he was the only one in this class. Well, that was not completely true. Jin sat 2 rows ahead of him, but she was good at blending in. She never drew attention to herself. A cadet near the front raised one of his 6 arms. His name was, and his insect-like face always seemed to be smiling, even when he was being cruel. Instructor, will we study the humans today? I heard they almost destroyed themselves before the coalition found them. Several cadets turned to look at Ho. He kept his face calm, but his hands formed fists under his desk. Clicked his claws together. An excellent observation, cadet. Yes, humanity provides a perfect example of pre-coalition barbarism. They were discovered just 50 years ago, barely in time to save them from themselves. How primitive were they? Asked another cadet. This one was Na, a being made of living crystal that glowed softly blue. Her voice sounded like wind chimes. Very primitive, said. He tapped a claw on his data pad and a holographic display appeared above his desk. They fought wars with chemical explosives. They had no neural linking, no regeneration technology, no respawn capabilities. When they died permanently. A wave of shock went through the classroom. Death was rare in the coalition. Most species had developed ways to back up consciousness or regenerate bodies. The idea of permanent death seemed horrific to them. But instructor, said Woon, a cadet whose body was made of purple gas held together by a containment suit. If death was permanent, surely they avoided combat. Surrender protocols must have been very strong. Made a sound that might have been a laugh. That is what one would think, but humans are not logical creatures. They fought anyway, they fought often, and they fought brutally. Ho raised his hand slowly. Instructor, perhaps we could study a different species today. The wars, maybe, or the expansion period. His yellow eyes fixed on him. Are you uncomfortable with this lesson, Cadet Ho? I just think there are better examples of. Your discomfort is noted and dismissed. The purpose of this class is to understand how primitive species think, so we can defend against similar mentalities in the future. Sit down. Ho was already sitting, but he understood the meaning. Be quiet. Jin turned in her seat and caught his eye. Her expression said what she could not speak aloud. This is going to be bad. Continued. I have obtained actual footage from human military conflicts. This is rare material, as humans tend to be, secretive about their history. But the Coalition archives are complete. Today, you will see what war truly looked like before civilization. He tapped his data pad again. The lights in the classroom dimmed. The holographic display grew larger, filling the front wall. This footage comes from what humans call World War II, a global conflict that killed approximately 70 million humans over 6 years. To put that in perspective, the entire coalition has lost 47 million beings in the last 50,000 years of recorded history. Humans lost more than that in 6 years, fighting only themselves. The classroom went very quiet. Now then, said his tail swishing faster, let us begin with a battle humans call Stalingrad. Pay attention. There will be an exam. Ho closed his eyes for a moment. He wanted to leave. He wanted to stop what was about to happen, but he was a cadet, and cadets followed orders, even when those orders felt wrong. The holographic display flickered to life. Grainy black and white footage appeared, showing a city covered in snow. Buildings were shattered, just broken walls and rubble. The cold looked deadly even through the display. "This is interesting," narrated. "The battle took place during winter. Temperatures regularly dropped below -30 degrees Celsius. Notice the primitive clothing. Notice the simple weapons. And notice." He paused the footage on an image of a soldier, face covered in dirt and frost, eyes hollow with exhaustion. "Notice that they are still there, still fighting. In conditions that would kill most species within hours, humans fought for 5 months." Made a disgusted sound. 5 months, over one city, why not simply surrender and negotiate? Shook his head. "This is what makes them fascinating and terrifying. Humans do not surrender easily. Watch." The footage played on. Cadets watched in growing horror as explosions tore through streets. Buildings collapsed. Soldiers ran through fire and smoke. Bodies lay in the snow. Then the casualty numbers appeared on the screen. Over 2 million dead, in one battle, in one city. Mi-sun, an aquatic cadet whose desk was filled with breathable water, made a gurgling sound of distress. 2 million. That cannot be correct. That would be a 90% casualty rate for some units. "Correct," said. "Some human units suffered complete casualties and were reformed with new soldiers, who then also suffered complete casualties. Some buildings changed hands over 20 times, with all occupants killed each time." Sung-ho, another crystalline being like Na, raised a glowing appendage. "Instructor, I request permission to leave. I feel unwell." "Permission? You need to understand this. All of you do, because humans are our allies now and you must know what they are capable of." Ho stared at his desk. He could feel everyone's eyes on him and Jin. They were being judged for things that happened before they were born, on a planet they had left behind. But he also knew that was right about one thing. Everyone needed to understand. They just did not understand yet what the real lesson was. That would come later, and it would be much worse than any of them imagined. The footage continued playing, and the classroom filled with sounds that made the alien cadets flinch. Explosions, gunfire, screaming. Instructor stood silent now, letting the images speak for themselves. Ho watched his classmates instead of the screen. He had seen these videos before, in private, trying to understand his own species' history. But watching others see them for the first time was different. Harder, somehow. His compound eyes were fixed on the display, but his mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of distress in his species. Nu's crystal body had stopped glowing and turned dark gray. Even Woon's gaseous form seemed to shrink inside his containment suit. The footage showed human soldiers moving through destroyed buildings. Their weapons were simple metal tubes that used explosive powder to shoot small pieces of metal at high speed. Primitive, as had said, but effective. "Pause here," commanded, and the image froze. "What do you observe about their equipment?" A cadet named Bora spoke up. She was from a species that looked like walking plants with leaves instead of hair. "They have no shields, no energy barriers, no armor plating." "Correct. Their clothing is fabric, thick fabric but still just fabric. A direct hit from their own weapons would kill them instantly." "Then how did they survive?" Bora asked. "Many did not," said simply. He let that sink in before continuing the footage. The next scene showed something that made half the class gasp. A human soldier was lying in the snow, clearly wounded, and then another soldier ran toward him, not away from danger but toward it, ran through active gunfire to reach the wounded one. "Stop," Mi-sun called out, her voice bubbling through her water-filled helmet. "Stop the video. What is that human doing?" Pause the footage. "That is what humans call a medic, a medical officer. Their job is to treat wounded soldiers. During the battle, Woon's voice rose in pitch. While projectiles are still flying, that is suicide. Jin turned in her seat to face the class. Until now, she had been silent, but something in Woon's voice made her speak. We do not leave our wounded behind, ever. That is the rule. But that is illogical, said. If a soldier is wounded in active combat, retrieval should wait until fighting stops. That is standard coalition protocol. It is in every military manual. It is not in ours, Ho said quietly. His tail swished. Indeed, human military doctrine has a phrase, no man left behind. They will risk additional casualties to retrieve wounded or dead soldiers, even when tactically disadvantageous. The footage played on. The medic reached the wounded soldier and began treating him while bullets hit the wall behind them. Other soldiers provided covering fire. Then they carried the wounded man away. The survival instinct should prevent this behavior, Na said, her crystal body flickering with confused colors. Self-preservation is the strongest biological drive. How do they override it? Training, Jin answered, and something else, something harder to explain. Try, said, his tone challenging. Jin was quiet for a moment. We fight for each other, not for nations or ideas or territory. Those are just the reasons that start wars, but humans fight for the person next to them. We fight so our friends can go home. Sung Ho made a sound like cracking ice. That makes it worse. That makes it so much worse. You know death is permanent and you still go back into the killing zone for each other. Every time, Ho said. 3 cadets stood up and walked toward the door. Sit down, ordered. No, sir, one of them said. He was the same species as Sung Ho. I request emergency medical leave. I am experiencing psychological distress. Stared at him for a long moment, then nodded. Granted, anyone else? 2 more cadets stood, then another. Within seconds, 5 cadets had left the room. The door closed behind them with a soft hiss. Weak, muttered. They cannot handle simple historical footage. It is not simple, Bora said softly. These humans knew they could die permanently and they fought anyway. They knew their friends could die permanently and they went to save them anyway. That is not primitive. That is terrifying. Tapped his claws on the desk. Let us continue. The footage becomes more intense. More intense. Mi-sun's voice was almost a whisper. How could it be more intense than this? Showed them how. The next series of clips came from different battles, different years, different wars, but all human, all brutal. They saw soldiers charging across open ground while explosions threw dirt and bodies into the air. They saw humans fighting in jungles, in deserts, in cities, on beaches. They saw humans flying primitive aircraft directly into enemy ships, sacrificing themselves to destroy the target. Wait, Sung Ho said, standing up so fast his desk scraped backward. Go back to that last part. Reversed the footage. It showed a human pilot deliberately crashing his aircraft into a warship. The explosion consumed both. He did that on purpose, Sung Ho said. That was intentional suicide. Yes, confirmed. Humans call them kamikaze pilots. They volunteered for these missions. Volunteered, Nu's voice was barely audible. They chose to die. Ho nodded. They believed it would help their people win the war, so they did it. His mandibles stopped clicking. He sat very still. You are telling me that humans would choose certain death if they thought it would help their side win? Yes. That is not courage. That is insanity. Jin turned to face him fully. Would your species do the same if it meant protecting your family? Did not answer. None of them did, because they all knew the answer. In coalition military doctrine, soldiers surrendered when victory became unlikely. Sacrifice was considered wasteful. Life was precious because death was rare. But humans had lived with permanent death for their entire existence. They had made different rules. The footage continued, showed them battles where humans ate their own leather boots because there was no food, showed them soldiers fighting in temperatures that should have killed them, showed them injuries that would have ended any coalition soldier's career, but humans kept fighting. And through it all, the numbers kept appearing. Casualties, deaths, millions of them. Finally stopped the footage. The classroom lights came back on, but they seemed too bright now, too clean. Everything felt wrong after what they had seen. "I will give you all a 5-minute break," said. "Get water, breathe, compose yourselves, and then we continue." Ho stood and walked to the water dispenser in the corner. His hand shook slightly as he filled a cup. Jin joined him. "They hate us now," she whispered. "They fear us," Ho corrected. "That is different." "Is it better?" He drank the water and crushed the cup slowly. "I do not know yet." Behind them, the remaining cadets sat in shocked silence and prepared the next series of footage, unaware that he was about to reveal something far worse than anything they had seen so far. Something that would change how every species in the coalition viewed humanity forever. Because they had not yet learned the truth. All those battles, all those deaths, all that suffering was humans fighting humans. And the next footage would make that crystal clear. The 5-minute break stretched to 10, then 15. Did not rush them. Even he seemed to need time to process what they had watched. His tail moved slowly now, the excited swishing from earlier completely gone. When everyone settled back into their seats, the classroom felt different. Colder, despite the perfect temperature control. The remaining cadets looked at Ho and Jin differently now, not with the casual dismissal from before, but with something closer to fear. Cleared his throat, a wet clicking sound. "We will now examine more recent human conflicts. These occurred within the last 200 years of human development, just before they achieved space travel." He pulled up a new file. This footage comes from multiple sources. Earth had developed recording technology by this period, so documentation is extensive, perhaps too extensive. The screen lit up again. This time the footage was in color, which somehow made it worse. The black and white images had felt distant like ancient history, but these new images looked recent, real. They saw soldiers moving through dense jungle, the green so bright it hurt to look at. They saw humans fighting in mud that came up to their knees. They saw helicopters falling from the sky. Nu's crystal body flickered with confused patterns. "Where is this? What planet?" Earth said, "All of these battles occurred on Earth. But the terrain is completely different from the previous footage. Earth has multiple climate zones. Deserts, jungles, frozen regions, mountains. Humans fought wars in all of them." Bora leaned forward. Who were they fighting in these jungles? It does not look like the same enemy from the earlier footage. Paused, his yellow eyes swept across the classroom. "A perceptive question. Before I answer, I want to show you one more series." He changed the footage again. This time they saw trenches filled with mud and water. Humans sat in these trenches for weeks, months. The footage showed them going over the top, charging across barbed wire and shell craters while machine guns cut them down. "This battle," said, his voice careful, "was called Verdun. It lasted 10 months. 300,000 humans died. Another 400,000 were wounded." Sung Ho's crystalline form had gone completely dark now. "In 10 months, that is impossible. No species would continue fighting with those casualty rates. Surrender protocols would activate after losing even 10%. Humans lost entire divisions and reformed them with new soldiers," said. "Some units were completely destroyed and rebuilt 3, 4, 5 times." Mi-sun bubbled something in her own language, then switched to coalition standard. "Why? What could possibly be worth that many permanent deaths?" Looked at Ho. "Perhaps our human cadet can explain." Ho shook his head. "I cannot explain it. I do not understand it myself. My ancestors did these things, but I do not know why they thought it was necessary." Try insisted. Ho stood slowly. He felt everyone's eyes on him. They fought for land, for resources, for ideas about how society should work, for revenge, for pride, for 1,000 different reasons that all seemed important at the time. But none of those things are worth permanent death, said. His earlier mockery was gone now, replaced with genuine confusion. I know, Ho said. We know that now, but they did not know it then. Na spoke up, her voice soft like distant bells. I have a question, and I am afraid of the answer, but I must ask. Everyone turned to look at her. Instructor, in all this footage, you keep saying humans as if they were fighting some external enemy, but the technology level is the same on both sides. The weapons are identical. The tactics are similar. She paused, her crystal body flickering with nervous light. Were humans fighting other humans in these battles? The classroom went absolutely silent. Tail stopped moving completely. He looked at Ho, then at Jin, then back at Na. Yes, every battle I have shown you today was human versus human. The reaction was immediate. Sung Ho stood up so fast his desk tipped over. Woon's gaseous form pressed against the walls of his containment suit as if trying to escape. Bora's leaves wilted. Mi-sun's water turned cloudy with agitation. That is not possible, said, but his voice was weak now. Species do not wage war against themselves. It is evolutionary suicide. It goes against every survival instinct. And yet, said, bringing up more footage, humans fought each other for their entire recorded history. Over 10,000 years of nearly constant warfare, human against human. The new footage showed battles from different eras. Ancient humans with swords and shields, medieval humans with armor and siege weapons, modern humans with tanks and jets, all fighting other humans. Jin stood now too. Every weapon you see, she said quietly, was designed to kill other humans. Every tactic was developed fighting other humans. Every defense was created to protect against other humans. We spent 10,000 years learning how to destroy ourselves. But why? Sung Ho's voice cracked like breaking ice. Why would any species do this? Because we were alone, Ho said. We looked up at the stars and saw nothing. No allies, no enemies, no teachers, just silence. So we fought each other because there was no one else to fight, and we kept fighting because we did not know how to stop. Brought up a data display. Numbers filled the screen. Total human casualties from human-on-human warfare, approximately 1 billion deaths over 10,000 years. The coalition has lost 47 million beings in 50,000 years across all species combined. Humans lost more than 20 times that number fighting only themselves. Bora made a sound like wind through dead leaves. How did your species survive? How did you not drive yourselves to extinction? We nearly did, Jin said. Several times. We developed weapons that could destroy our entire planet, and we came very close to using them. What stopped you? Na asked. Fear, Ho said simply. We scared ourselves enough that we finally stopped. Well, mostly stopped. There were still wars when the coalition found us. Small ones, but we were learning. Stood suddenly. I need to leave. I need to file a report. About what? Asked. About this, about them. He pointed at Ho and Jin. Humans should not be in the coalition military. They should not be training alongside other species. They are too dangerous. Dangerous to who? Jin asked, her voice hard now. We have been coalition members for 50 years. How many incidents have there been? How many times have humans attacked other species? Hesitated, none but. But nothing. We chose peace. We chose to join the coalition. We chose to follow the rules. But you could choose differently, said. That is what this footage proves. You could go back to being what you were. Ho walked toward slowly. The cadet backed up until he hit the wall. You are right, Ho said. We could. Every human has that capability inside them, that history, that darkness. But here is what you do not understand yet. What? Every species in this coalition developed with some advantage. You have natural armor. Nus people can share thoughts through crystal resonance. Wound species can survive in vacuum. Me Sun's people can breathe underwater. He paused. You know what advantage humans have? No one answered. We survive. No matter what you throw at us, no matter how bad things get, humans survive. We survived ice ages and plagues. We survived fighting ourselves for 10,000 years. We survived despite having none of the natural advantages other species have. And we did it through one trait. We absolutely refused to give up. Sung Ho spoke from across the room. That is what terrifies me. You are telling me that if the coalition ever faced an enemy that required that kind of determination, that kind of refusal to surrender, you could do it again. Ho looked at him. We really hope we never have to find out. Shut off the display. Class dismissed. I am canceling tomorrow's session. Everyone needs time to process this information. We will resume next week with a different topic. The cadets left quickly, not talking, not looking at each other. Within minutes, only Ho and Jin remained. I apologize, said finally. I thought this would be an academic exercise, a history lesson. I did not expect, he trailed off. Did not expect them to be afraid of us, Jin asked. Yes. They should be, Ho said. Not because we want to hurt them, but because they should understand what we are capable of if necessary. Fear breeds respect. Respect breeds caution. Caution keeps peace. Nodded slowly. Perhaps you are right. I will note that in my report, but I must ask, is it true? Could humans really return to that level of warfare if needed? Ho and Jin looked at each other. Finally, Jin answered. We are trying very hard to never find out. 3 days passed before Ho and Jin saw any of their classmates again. The academy felt different now. When they walked through the corridors, other cadets would go quiet. Some moved to the other side of the hallway. Others just stared. On the third night, there was a knock on Ho's door. He opened it to find Sung Ho standing there, his crystalline body dim and pulsing with nervous light patterns. May I come in? They asked. Ho stepped aside. Sung Ho entered and stood awkwardly near the desk. His species did not sit like humans did. I have not been able to sleep, Sung Ho said finally. My people do not truly sleep like yours do, but we enter rest states. I have not been able to rest since the class. I am sorry, Ho said, meaning it. No, do not be sorry. I came to apologize and to ask questions if you are willing to answer them. Ho gestured to the floor, and they both sat. Sung Ho's crystal body chimed softly as he settled. Ask, Ho said. The footage showed humans fighting without any of the technology that makes death temporary. No neural backups, no clone facilities, no consciousness transfer. When a human died in those wars, everything they were simply ended. Correct. Correct. And yet they fought anyway. They charged into gunfire. They stayed in frozen trenches. They flew suicide missions. How? Sung Ho's light patterns flickered rapidly. My species has a surrender protocol built into our biology. When casualties reach 3%, our bodies start to shut down. We physically cannot continue fighting. It is survival instinct. Humans have survival instinct too, Ho said. But we have something else. We can override it. That is not evolution. That is mutation. That is a flaw. Maybe, Ho agreed. Or maybe it is what let us survive when we had nothing else. My people's was not kind. No natural armor, no venom, no claws. We were prey animals for most of our evolution. Weak, slow, soft. Then how did you become the apex species? We learned to work together, to fight together. And we learned that sometimes the only way to survive is to be willing to die. Sung Ho's lights dimmed further. That makes no logical sense. I know, but it works. There was a long silence. Then Sung Ho spoke again. I looked up more human history. I should not have, but I could not stop myself. Do you know about a place called Thermopylae? Ho nodded slowly. 300 humans held a mountain pass against hundreds of thousands of enemies. They knew they would die. They sent everyone else away and chose to die. Why? To give their people time to prepare, to show that they would not surrender, to become a symbol. They died for a symbol. Humans die for lots of things. Symbols, ideas, each other. We are very strange that way. Sung-Ho chimed thoughtfully. I read about more battles. Reservoir, the Alamo, Masada, Bastogne, Battle of Britain, on and on and on. Always the same pattern. Humans refusing to surrender even when defeat was certain. Sometimes we won those battles anyway, Ho said quietly. That is the thing about not surrendering. Sometimes the impossible becomes possible. Another knock on the door. This time it was Na, with Woon floating beside her in his containment suit. Then Bora arrived. Then Mi-sun in her mobile water tank. They all crowded into Ho's small room and sat in a circle on the floor. No one spoke for a while. Finally, Woon broke the silence. I told my family about the class. They did not believe me. They said I must have misunderstood the footage. You did not misunderstand, Jin said. She had arrived last and stood by the door. I know, so I sent them the files that released for our study. My mother watched 10 minutes and then called me, crying. She asked how humans were allowed into the coalition. She said we had let monsters join us. Are you, Bora asked softly, are you monsters? Jin came and sat with them. I do not know. We did monstrous things. We killed billions of our own kind over thousands of years. We invented weapons specifically designed to cause maximum suffering. We poisoned our own planet. We came very close to making ourselves extinct. But you stopped, Na said. We got better at it, Jin corrected. We are still human. We still have that capacity inside us. Every human does. Mi-sun gurgled nervously. That is what scares me. You are telling us that any human at any time could access that violence, that determination, that refusal to give up no matter the cost. Yes. How do we trust you then? How does the coalition trust any of you? Ho stood and walked to his window. Outside, stars stretched forever. Because we chose this. The coalition did not force us to join. We asked to join. We wanted to be better than what we were. We wanted to learn from species that had figured out peace. But what if you change your minds? His voice came from the doorway. He stood there, having arrived without announcement. What if one day humans decide that cooperation is not working? What if you decide to go back to your old ways? Ho turned to face him. Then you would have to stop us. That is why we agreed to population limits. Why we agreed to restricted access to military technology, why we accepted monitoring of our home system. We built in safeguards because we do not trust ourselves either. The room went very quiet at that admission. You do not trust your own species? Sung-Ho asked. Would you? Jin responded. If you had our history, if you knew what your people had done to each other for 10,000 years. We love humanity. We are proud of how far we have come, but we also remember what we are capable of. Nug glowed softly. I think I understand something now. The footage showed us it was meant to teach us about primitive warfare, but that is not what we learned. What did you learn? Ho asked. That humans are not primitive, you are dangerous. There is a difference. A primitive species fights because they do not know better. You fought knowing exactly what you were doing. You understood death, understood suffering, and chose violence anyway. That is not primitive, that is calculating. Bora's leaves rustled. It makes me wonder about the rest of the coalition. Every species here developed with some natural advantage. Armor, venom, regeneration, telepathy. Things that made survival easier. But humans had none of that. So you developed something else. You developed the ability to endure anything, to survive anything, to refuse to quit no matter what. It was that or die, Jin said simply. And that is exactly what makes you terrifying, Woon said. His gaseous form swirled faster. Because if the coalition ever faces a threat that requires that kind of determination, that kind of absolute refusal to surrender, you could do it. You have proven you can do it. We hope we never have to, Ho said. But you could, it was not a question. Ho met each of their eyes in turn. Yes, we could. Stepped fully into the room. I filed my report. I recommended that humans be removed from military training, that you should be classified as too dangerous for combat roles. And Jin asked. It was rejected. The review board said something I did not understand at first. They said, "We pray we never need them, but we are grateful we have them." What does that mean? Sung Ho chimed thoughtfully. It means they understand what I am only now beginning to understand. The coalition has been at peace for 200 years. We have forgotten what real war looks like, what real sacrifice means. But humans remember. And if something comes that threatens all of us, something that will not negotiate or surrender, something that requires what humans call total war, then they have us, Ho finished. We are the species that knows how to fight when death is permanent, how to continue when victory seems impossible, how to endure what should not be endured. It is like keeping a weapon in storage, Na said slowly. Hopping you never need it, but knowing it is there if everything else fails. That is a dark way to view it, Mi-sun bubbled. But accurate, Jin said. And honestly, we are okay with that. Better to be the weapon that never gets used than to have everyone need us and not be there. They sat in silence for a long time after that. Outside, stars continued their eternal dance, peaceful and beautiful. But everyone in that room now understood that peace sometimes required the capacity for war, and that humanity had that capacity in abundance. The Academy Council met in emergency session 3 days after class. Ho and Jin were not invited, but they heard about it anyway. News traveled fast in a space station, even one as large as 9. The debate lasted 14 hours. Some council members wanted all human cadets removed from military training immediately. Others argued that humans had been peaceful coalition members for 50 years. The arguments went back and forth, getting more heated as time passed. In the end, they reached a compromise, or what they called a compromise. Ho thought it was something else entirely. Admiral, the station commander, summoned all 3 human cadets to his office. He was a massive, even bigger than, with deep blue scales and scars that marked decades of service. "Sit," he rumbled, gesturing to chairs that adjusted for human proportions. Ho Jin and the 3rd human cadet, a young man named Dong, sat. Looked at them for a long moment with his yellow eyes. The council has made a decision about humans in the military academy. "We are being expelled," Dong said quietly. He was the youngest of them, only 19. "No," said, "you are being promoted." All 3 humans looked at him in confusion. Pulled up a holographic display. The council reviewed all footage from class. They also reviewed the subsequent conversations you had with other cadets, and they reviewed 50 years of human service in the coalition. And Jin asked. And they realized something. The coalition has become soft. We have had peace for so long that we have forgotten how to fight when it matters. Our surrender protocols are designed for civilized warfare, for conflicts that follow rules, for enemies that negotiate. "That is good, is it not?" Ho said. "Peace is good." "Peace is very good," agreed. "Until someone comes along who does not want peace, who does not follow the rules, who will not negotiate." He leaned forward. The council reviewed historical records of every coalition conflict in the last 50,000 years. Do you know what they found? None of them answered. We have never fought a war of survival. Every conflict ended in negotiated surrender. Maximum casualties in any battle, 4% before withdrawal protocols activated. We have never needed to fight the way humans fought each other. "You are saying this like it is a bad thing," Jin said carefully. "It is not bad, it is wonderful, but it is also dangerous, because we do not know what to do if we ever face an enemy that requires total commitment. That requires fighting past the point of surrender protocols. That requires, he paused, that requires human-level determination. Ho felt cold despite the warm office. What are you asking us to do? Stood and walked to the window. Stars filled the view, peaceful and eternal. The Council wants to create a new program, Human Strategic Doctrine. You would teach other species how humans think, how humans fight, how humans survive. You want us to teach them to be like us? Dong asked, his voice rising. To teach them to fight like we fought each other. No, said firmly. We want you to teach them to survive like you survived. There is a difference. Is there? Jin asked. Turn to face them. I am old. I have served in the coalition military for 70 years, and I will tell you a secret. The thing that keeps me awake at night is not the enemies we know. It is the ones we do not know yet. The ones still out there beyond our borders who might not want peace, who might not surrender, who might require us to fight like we have never fought before. And if that happens, Ho asked, then I want every species in this coalition to know what humans know. That survival sometimes requires sacrifice. That victory sometimes requires endurance beyond logic. That sometimes the only way forward is to refuse to give up. The three humans looked at each other. Finally, Jin spoke. You are asking us to teach the galaxy to be more human, to share our darkness. I am asking you to share your strength, corrected. Yes, humans did terrible things to each other, but you also survived terrible things. You endured, you adapted, you overcame. And now you are here, peaceful members of our coalition. You chose to be better. That is what I want you to teach. Over the next 3 months, they built the new program. Ho became the primary instructor for human tactical adaptation. Jin taught survival psychology. Dong specialized in operational endurance. The first class was small. Only 12 students, all volunteers who had specifically requested human instruction. Was one of them. So were Sung Ho, Na, Woon, Beora, and Mi Sun. On the first day, Ho stood at the front of a new classroom. It looked different from the regular academy rooms. Harder, more primitive. They had removed all the comfort features. This course will be difficult, Ho began. Not physically, though there will be physical challenges, but mentally, emotionally. We are going to teach you things that go against your biological programming, things that will feel wrong. Like what? A new student asked. Her name was Youngmi, and she was from a species that looked like living metal. Like fighting past your surrender protocols. Like enduring when every instinct tells you to quit. Like choosing to continue when stopping would be logical. Why would we want to learn that? Youngmi asked. Sung Ho answered before Ho could. Because we hope we never need it. But if we do need it and we do not know how, then everyone dies. That is why. Ho nodded. Sung Ho is correct. The coalition has been blessed with long peace. We want to keep that peace. But peace without strength is just waiting to become conquest. He pulled up the first lesson on the holographic display. Today, we start with a human concept. We call it the will to survive. Not the instinct to survive, which all species have. The will. The conscious choice to continue even when continuation seems impossible. Over the following weeks, they trained. Ho taught them to push past their comfort zones. Jin taught them to manage fear and maintain cohesion under stress. Dong taught them to function on minimal resources for extended periods. None of it was actual combat training. The coalition had plenty of combat instructors. What the humans taught was different. They taught attitude, mindset, the mental framework that let humans endure 10,000 years of warfare and still survive. Slowly, the classes grew. More students volunteered. Within 6 months, Human Strategic Doctrine became the most requested elective in the academy. Not because students wanted to learn violence, but because they wanted to learn endurance. One evening, Ho found Admiral in the observation lounge, watching the stars. "Your program is succeeding," the Admiral said without turning. "Is it? I am teaching aliens to think like humans. I'm not sure if that is success or disaster." "You are teaching them to survive. There is nothing disastrous about survival." They stood in silence for a moment, then spoke again. "Do you know why I really pushed for this program?" "Because you believe we will face a real enemy someday." "Yes, but not just that." Turned to face him. "Because I realized something watching that footage from class. Humans are not warriors. Humans are survivors. Every species in this coalition developed with advantages. You developed with nothing but the refusal to die, and that is the most powerful advantage of all. We did terrible things with that advantage." "Yes, but you also did something no other species has done. You turned that advantage toward peace. You chose to stop fighting. That requires even more strength than fighting did." 2 years passed, the program expanded. Humans became permanent instructors at every coalition academy. They did not teach combat, they taught resilience. And then, 15 years after that classroom where showed his fateful footage, the coalition encountered something that changed everything. A species called the Owl emerged from deep space. They did not negotiate. They did not surrender. They simply attacked, overwhelming coalition defenses with brutal efficiency. For the first time in its history, the coalition faced an enemy that required total war. Admiral, now Supreme Commander of coalition forces, stood in the war room surrounded by leaders from every species. They were losing, badly. Surrender protocols were activating across multiple fleets. "We need another option," someone said. "There is no other option," another replied. "They will not negotiate. Surrender protocols are our only." "No," a voice interrupted. Sung-Ho stepped forward, his crystalline body glowing with determination. "There is one more option, the human option." Everyone turned to look at him. 3% casualties and we surrender. That is our way. It has always been our way. But humans taught us another way, a harder way, a way that requires us to choose to continue when biology tells us to stop. "You are suggesting we override our surrender protocols?" someone asked, horrified. "I am suggesting we learn what humans learned, that sometimes survival requires endurance beyond logic, that sometimes the only way to win is to refuse to lose." Looked around the room, then his eyes found Ho standing in the corner. "Your people did this for 10,000 years." "Yes," Ho said quietly. "Can your people do it again, not against each other, but for all of us?" Ho took a deep breath. This was the moment he had feared and prepared for since joining the coalition. "Yes, we can. We hoped we would never have to, but yes." "Then teach us," said. "Teach everyone. Teach the entire coalition how humans fight when there is no other choice." And so they did. Humans became what they had always been, survivors. But this time, they survived together with everyone else. This time, their refusal to surrender protected not just themselves, but the entire galaxy. The Owl learned what the humans had learned long ago, that some species, when pushed far enough, will simply refuse to die, and that such species cannot be defeated, only destroyed, and destroying them costs more than victory is worth. 3 years later, the Owl sued for peace. Ho stood in the same observation lounge where he had talked with years before. Jin joined him, looking out at the stars. "We did it," she said. "We taught them to survive." "We taught them to be a little bit human," Ho corrected. "I am still not sure if that was mercy or cruelty." "Both," Jin said, "like most human things." They stood in silence, watching stars that now represented a galaxy that had learned what humans had always known. That peace is precious, but survival is essential. And sometimes, ensuring one requires embracing the other.